And we're back.
Welcome back, everybody, to the only podcast on the internet that knows that young MC has better things to do than hang out with Donald Trump.
And we know that because we are doctors.
Not doctors.
My name is Dr. Silverstein.
I'm Dr. Armshaw.
And on this week's episode, we are going to be talking about the Makerfield by-election, Peter Murrell's guilty plea in the S&P embezzlement case.
Turning to the international stage, we'll be looking at Groundhog's Day, Iranian edition. Is there peace? Is there war? We'll find out.
And in the U.S., we will be looking towards Trump's very, very, very bad week, including the Texas Senate race, which seems good for him, but isn't. The Comey case has dropped. The slush fund's been blocked. Everything that he wants is not going his way. And finally, we're going to have some good news. All that on Doctors Not Doctors, starting right now. Patrick.
Chris.
Yeah, so have you been looking at the news this week? Because I've been looking at the news this week. Nothing big's happened, has it? So
no. It's been really sedate, honestly. Like a little bit boring, you know.
Well, I mean, it's actually been recess here in Westminster, so there wasn't much to talk about for Westminster, but that's okay because there are two big things happening around the UK that have taken parts of it and all of it by storm. Obviously, there is we can talk about the by-election in a second, but I think we obviously need to start with the elephant in the room, Peter Murrell and his embezzlement case against the S&P and his guilty plea.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I guess, as everybody knows, I work for the S&P Westminster Group. So I've been in the room with Peter Murrell from time to time. Luckily, we didn't speak much.
Well, that's good to know.
Yeah,
so for those of you who are less au fait with your Scottish politics, Peter Murrell was correct me if I'm wrong, treasurer for the Scottish National.
That is incorrect. Right? I think I better take this one.
Ooh, yes, I think you absolutely should. Yeah.
Okay, so Peter Murrell was the chief executive of the Scottish National Party for quite a while, I'd say from the early 2010s until quite recently, 2022. And during that time, he married a lady named Nicola Sturgeon. I think that was in 2010. I think it was around that time. Don't quote me on the dates. I wasn't invited to the wedding, so I don't know. When they got married, and then in 2016, Nicola became the First Minister of Scotland, which made Nicola the First Minister of Scotland and her husband the chief executive of the governing party of Scotland. And then in 2020, I believe, a complaint was filed with the police, basically questioning the location of some money for the S&P's independence referendum, IndyRef 2 as it's called. And there were donations made for it. And then an allegation was made that money had gone missing. And so the police investigated the S&P finances and questioned Nicola Sturgeon, Peter Murrell, and Colin Beattie, the party's treasurer, former treasurer. None of these people are in their positions, and all three of them were originally released without any charges. And then in the interim, Nicola resigned as first minister. Peter resigns as chief executive, and that was in 2020. And then in 2025 or 2024, 2025. Murrell was charged with embezzlement.
Right.
And in the interim, Nicola and Peter had ended their marriage. So basically, it was this massive, massive, massive story in Scotland, as it would be. The first minister, former first minister at that time, and the chief executive of the party being under investigation. And it turns out that that money donated to the party, Peter was using that to buy all sorts of a weird collection of things.
You mentioned a few of them before we started recording today. I think you said one of them was Crystal Salt Shaker?
This is all quite public knowledge now. There are lists upon lists of these online, but they were crystal salt shakers, pins, obviously a camper van, which was our motorhome, which was the obvious, the biggest one everyone was talking about from even at the very beginning of the time in of this investigation. So, and at worst, it seems that he actually gave some of these things to Nicholas as gifts. Including because we're recording this on the 31st of May. So today, Nicola Sturgeon has given, or an interview has aired today from Nicola Sturgeon with Laura Kunensberg, where they were discussing, all of these matters. And she did say that there was a necklace that she used to wear and she actually used to cherish that turns out that Murrell bought using embezzled funds. It's pretty brutal, but it's the you'll be surprised to hear that the stories in Scotland are not about what's happened and it's more about what they believe has continued to happen, and there are questions about the about continuing the case, about whether or not Nicola knew what was happening, or if she condoned it, or if anyone in the party continued to know. And now there are calls for an inquiry in both the Scottish Parliament and in Westminster by no other way to put it, but political leaders of other parties to push forward an inquiry. If it was the Scottish Affairs Committee in Westminster, it'd be a Scottish Labour member who's leading that. I don't know who would lead it in Scotland, because obviously it would be more complicated there, given that the SNP is the government. But a lot of these stories, this story has now kind of shifted away from Peter and his crimes, which he has admitted to. Which I remind everybody, because I look at the television and this week it's just we stopped talking about Peter Murrell, the criminal who admitted to the crimes, and now everybody's focused heavily on Nicola Sturgeon. They chased her down to book festivals in Ireland and the Hay Book Festival, which I think is in Wales.
Yes, it is.
People are running at her and kind of jumping over chairs and tables and stuff to try to basically say, how could you possibly not know, what was the, how do you not know what your husband's doing? And
I feel like that's, I'm just going to say it. That sounds a little bit like a sexist question. I think it's entirely fair to question whether or not Nicola Sturgeon knew and whether she should have known, right? But the implication that she must have known, right? Because how could she not know what her husband's doing? That's a ridiculous thing to say, basically. Wives are in charge of their husbands in some kind of bureaucratic sense, which is, I think, a weird thing to assume, Well,
it's difficult because Nicola obviously was the head of the party, but obviously an organization as big as the SNP, you're going to have lawyers, accountants, the rest of it, all of them dealing with the nitty gritty day to day. But basically, the arguments are, as leader of the party, how did you not know? But because they were married, and this has been kind of a long standing issue in Scottish politics that Nicola and Peter were married, and therefore, the assumption that, there was all these arguments that, the party shouldn't have let him or continue in his role as chief executive of the party because they were married. Now, I have questions about this. This is all, again, out in papers and stuff. But the question is, how would you stop a married couple? How do you fire somebody for getting married?
Yeah, that's a little bit problematic.
How do you say to somebody, hi, you're doing your job? And at this point, nobody really had any inkling of what was going on, because this is, 10 years ago. And the embezzlement took place for over a decade and nobody really seemed to figure it out. So how do you think you would be able to say to somebody, you just got married to the leader of the party, so you have to resign?
Yeah.
Or you've been married. How do you do that?
Well, that's okay. So I think we can distinguish between two scenarios, right? One where there's a married couple, one of them is the head of the party, and then the spouse ends up taking a major leadership role in the party. And I think, that might smack of nepotism, right? And you might have questions about that. Here we're talking about a situation where they were both already, high up in the party, basically, by the time they got married. So it's, I don't know, man. It seems like it would be a bit much of an ask to say, well, you have to choose between the career that you've poured your life into and the person that you want to marry. And we're just gonna, Like, you must get the party's approval before you can get married, which seems like it's a bit Soviet, you know?
It is a bit Soviet, yeah. So it's a complicated story because there you have all these different layers, right? And the layer that we seem to consistently forget about is Peter. Now, there was like the list about, when it first came out and he had first pled guilty, there was this, but now it's almost entirely focused on Nicola, and it's almost as if she has no feelings. It's almost as if it's almost as if this is the first time there's been this kind of scandal in the UK. The married part, sure. The married part, sure. I don't know that many chances that this has happened, but the level of detail that some of the journalists have gone into on this one is very notable.
I have one question for you about this.
Okay,
what is Nicola Sturgeon's role in the party right now?
She's just a person. I think she might be a member, but she stopped being. She's not an MSP anymore. She hasn't been leader for several years. So yeah, she's just a person who was who was a member of Parliament, a member of the Scottish Parliament.
You can't really say that like the public has a right to know exactly what it is that she knew, and then whether or not her judgment has been compromised because she's like running for office or seeking a seat in Parliament or something like that. Like this is just sort of like, you used to be someone who was politically in charge, and we have questions about what happened then, but not in a way that like appears to have anything to do with like legal ramifications. So it smacks a bit of, this is going to sell some papers, boys. So let's, up and at 'em.
Well, I would never comment on the veracity of the press. However, she's a person who just stopped being an MSP, right? Mm-hmm. So it's not like she hasn't been in the public sphere for many years.
No, it's true, right?
But I think that there are some corners who are trying to still connect kind of the whiff of criminality to her. Mm-hmm. There are some corners that are just angry at her for a number of reasons that took place while she was First Minister. There are a lot of different people who have a lot of different feelings about Nicola Sturgeon, and they're all coming out at the same time. The ex-bin fire is truly a bin fire, and it's just a matter of how long we will continue to talk about this. And I like I said, I've seen these people in public. I've seen these people, kind of around as, they've come in and or in and out of offices over my long time, affiliated with working for the group. So it's it's a shame, and I mean it's sad that that Peter has done. Peter has done this to. Sorry, for those of you at home, we're doing this on Zoom and my hand just went up. But it basically the people who donated money to the party, which includes members of Parliament, members of the Scottish Parliament, and obviously all of the tens of thousands of members. Yeah. At one point, over 100,000 members. Peter thought that he could just dip his toe or dip his full hand into the bucket and just take out what he felt like, and in such a weird way. And and yet people have seemingly. They want to forget about Peter very quickly and move straight on to Nicola. So I mean, we'll see if this is still a story next week. But do you have any more questions for me?
No, not questions, just a statement, really. I think I'm going to write a children's book, and it's going to be titled Peter Murrell and the Giant Bezel.
And the giant bezel.
And the giant bezel. Because that is actually the legitimate noun to use for the amount of money that has been embezzled. It's actually called the bezel. I know.
Wow, we learn something new every day.
Exactly.
Every cloud, right?
There's your silver lining, people.
Yeah.
I hope you enjoy it. Yeah.
Well, I think that's enough there on the Murrell saga. However, let's change to the Makerfield by-election, which is, it's obviously, of the three by-elections happening on the 18th of June,
Mm-hmm.
most people in the UK, especially, or I should rather say, most people in Westminster are going to be paying attention to that one. I will, of course, be looking at the ones in Aberdeen and in Dundee, but the ones for no particular reason, whatever.
Sure.
But the ones the one in Makerfield will have potentially a massive side effect for the rest of the UK. The candidates in this election are obviously, we have Lib Dems, we have the Libertarians, we have the Climate Party. There are a lot of people standing here. And of course, in a first past the post system, the more people you have, the easier it is for a person to get through on a minority of the vote.
That is absolutely true.
But of course, why don't we start talking about first their Green candidate, Sarah Wakefield,
all right,
who, as we said in our last podcast, there was not a Green candidate the last time we were speaking. So something's changed. The Greens have decided to put forward a candidate. And what are your thoughts on her desires to win?
Well, okay, so it seems like there's a real fear on the left that because it's a first past the post system, and you're right, the more people running, the greater the likelihood that a candidate can win with a minority of the vote. There's a real fear that by splitting the left-wing vote between Labour and the Greens, you end up allowing Reform to take the seat. So there was a lot of sort of questioning after the Green candidate stepped down, thanks to his, let's say, not so great social media posting over the years, right? Basically, he had put forward a conspiracy theory regarding the Golders Green ambulance attack, which is exactly the kind of thing you don't want to be talking about if you're trying to win an election for Parliament. So the Green candidate steps down, and then there was a question of, will the Greens run a candidate in this election at all, or instead hold fire and allow their voters to basically support Andy Burnham, the candidate for Labour? And it does appear the Greens have decided to put forward Sarah Wakefield. However, when she's been asked about sort of what she's doing in the race, what the goal is, she hasn't exactly been putting forward the vibe that she's in it to win it. Instead, the vibe very much seems to be, it's important that people have choices. It's important that the Greens put forward a Green platform. It's up to Labour to get a majority or to get a winning coalition. So it sort of seems like what they're doing is saying, look, we don't think we can win this. We're not going to try to run a huge campaign. We're not putting the kind of resources into this that we put into the Gordon and Dent by-election, where they won the seats over the Labour candidate. But at the same time, it doesn't look like they're willing to sort of hand victory to Andy Burnham on the equivalent of a silver platter. So I think this is a situation where, for form's sake, they're sort of putting forward the candidate, but there's no expectation that their candidate is in a position to win. And if the candidate does too well, they might end up with the worst of all worlds, which is a Reform candidate taking the seats.
Yeah. No.
It's interesting.
Well, I mean, it's about the power to split the vote. And speaking of that, Restore have a candidate named Rebecca Shepherd.
Speaking of,
who, the Restore Britain is the Rupert Lowe anti-Farage movement of, he's the I can be more racist than Reform.
You'll be shocked, Chris, to hear that Elon Musk supports Restore now.
Yes. Elon Musk is now giving his money to Restore, which is a huge kick in the nuts to Reform. But again, there's going to be a lot of people here. There's like a guy named Peter Ward for rejoining the EU. There's Michael Winstanley, the ultimate conservative name for the Conservative Party. He was the mayor of Wigan. I mean,
fair enough.
The politics have changed. There's Robert Pownell is an independent.
Right.
And then, of course, we'll get with the last two in a second. There's Alan Howland Loud Hope from the Monster Evil Looting Party. There's Paul Gold, the independent. There's Ed Gimmel from the Climate Party. There's John Dyer, an independent. There's Dan Clark from the Libertarian Party. There's Count Binface from the Count Binface Party. There's Jake Austin from the Liberal Democrats. But we're really only here for two people. Honestly, let's start with Robert Keyon from Reform. And we do that name right off the top of our heads. We didn't have to go and look for it.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no, we are professionals, people, and we take this very seriously.
Absolutely.
All right. So Robert Kenyon, it's kind of interesting. You know how I mentioned before that the Green candidate had to sort of withdraw because of an unfortunate history with social media.
Yes.
This is not the kind of thing that Reform has ever worried.
Yeah. No.
Robert Kenyon also has a very interesting history on social media, saying things like women just have abortions so that they can have more sex, which is fucking wild. It is a crazy, misogynistic, insane thing to think about any individual human being, much less the majority of the human species. So, that's kind of fun. That's kind of fun. But it's interesting because he's not just got a history of saying like really extreme right-wing things. He also has a history of saying some things that you think would be a bit more problematic for his party.
Yeah.
Specifically, he said, he made some posts suggesting that he was not very happy with the Brexit results, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I don't believe he's declarative. Did he vote for Brexit? Was that?
Well, he did say that he woke up the day after Brexit shitting myself, and that's a direct quote, by the way. And argued that the campaigners for leaving the EU, quote, peddled nationalistic pish ahead of the referendum. So, which is, interesting, since Reform is basically the new version of the Brexit Party.
It is just the Brexit Party with a new name on it.
Well, exactly. So, this is like one of the things that really binds the party together is the idea that Brexit was super important. And if there's any problems with what's happened since 2016, i.e. everything that has happened since 2016, it's only because we didn't Brexit hard enough, right?
Right.
So it's interesting that they've got a candidate who doesn't seem to be on board with, or at least wasn't at that time, on board with one of the most important elements of sort of the party's ideology.
Yeah.
And also, has a history of saying outlandishly ridiculous things that are super right-wing on the internet. None of this appears to be a problem for the Reform Party. And I think this is an indication of the fundamental difference between Reform and the Greens.
Yeah.
For the Greens, I think you've got a party that really is attempting to, move in the direction of becoming a party with a mass base, right? It's attempting to plant its flag and say, we are a party that is capable of forming a government. We're growing and we're going to have some growing pains, but like we're taking seriously the idea that, when we put forward a candidate, it's important that they not embarrass us all, for God's sakes, right?
Yeah.
So, and I think that's commendable. I think that's probably a good thing.
Yeah, it's commendable. It's a good thing, but
yeah, with Reform, like this is interesting because several years ago, for the entirety of the time I've been in the United Kingdom, for the last 16 years, as regular as the rains in April, you would hear stories about, there's a UKIP candidate who has had to pull out because it turns out he thinks the Jews control the banks. Or there's a UKIP candidate who's had to resign because it turns out that he thinks the Holocaust never happened. There's a Brexit Party candidate. They're normally within a hand. They're normally within at least one hand, like length, arm length of Nigel Farage. And let's not forget about the leader of Reform in Wales, who's now in jail. Former leader of Reform in Wales, who's now in jail for taking Russian bribes. Yeah, so it's not like Reform and its prior parties
iterations. Yeah,
its prior iterations. Thank you. It's not like they didn't have a history of being able to say, "Oh, yeah, well, we obviously we have nothing to do with that. That's just terrible. No place in British politics, et cetera, and so we're getting rid of that candidate." The fact that they're not doing that here, I think, it may be an indication that they think it's too late to sort of. Well, it's definitely too late to get a new candidate, right? So they're kind of like stuck with the one that they have. But also, it's an indication that they don't really see the ideology of Brexit as being that important. I don't think it's so much an ideological party as much as it is the party of Farage.
Oh yeah, that's the problem with these kind of parties. It's that it's a cult of personality. This is what the party. It doesn't matter what the party is about. It doesn't matter what they say, as long as the leader is in its place, whether it be MAGA or Reform or whatever. These far right parties, they need to have the kind of above you leader who declares that all good people need to be blonde hair and blue eyed, even though the leader has black hair and brown eyes.
Exactly.
So
exactly.
They always so it doesn't matter what he says, and it's not going to hurt like the hardcore, supporters of the party, but we'll see how it affects people because obviously we're going to talk about Andy Burnham, who is the last person on this list who is a candidate. And the issue is, I think the biggest issue is how is he going to be received by the people of Makersfield? How is he going to be received in place of the reform candidate? Because, like it or lump it, a lot of people back reform because they think that reform is going to do what nobody else can do and solve for everything. Right. And how do you get somebody to say, hi, I'm from the Labor Party and I'm here to help, given what the Labor Party has been doing for the past 18 months, almost 2 years now. And they haven't put out a good version of their story. And they've been, trying to play both sides by keeping the markets happy, but also pissing off their own people. So you're going to Makersfield, you're going to the north, and you're saying, all right, well, we're not going to give a normal, typical Mandelson approved candidate. We're going to get you Andy Burnham, who was an MP, but now he's been mayor of Manchester, and he's a well-liked, well-respected person. But how's he going to help us? And so I've seen stuff online from Manchester, the Manchester Evening News, and it didn't come out swimmingly well for Labour. The Vox Pops were, it was soft, and obviously this is unscientific, obviously, but like the people they're talking to is very soft support for Labour, if at all, and very hard support for reform, depending on who you were talking to. And and it depends who stopped, but they seemingly were stopping random people on the street in the constituency. And obviously there's plenty of other things out there, and I believe the polling has Labour and reform neck and neck or very close together. It's not this isn't the Greens versus the Labour in Gorton and Denton. This is very much not. This is going to come down to probably a handful of people.
The thing is, I think if you're thinking about what effect Andy Burnham has on the race for Labour, I think it's hard to argue that he's not a net positive for them. He's better than anyone else they could have chosen. Well, definitely, right. But also because it's because of the fact that he hasn't been in Westminster while all of this has been happening, right? He's untainted in a real way by sort of the Starmer government. He's untainted by the awfulness of the late stage Toryism, So basically, he has a bit part of like the Westminster bubble in a sense, and better than that for him, he's been the mayor of Birmingham. He has been able to establish an independent identity beyond the Labour Party itself. He has a record that he can run on of, here are things I've accomplished, here's what I've done to make things better for the people that I represent. So when he then runs, he can say more than get our party in charge and the party will do great things. Instead, he could say, no, get me in there, put me in, coach, and let me do for you what I've done before, right? It's a much stronger appeal to be able to make to voters. Yeah, it creates another problem though, which I saw in these pieces to camera, which is what is Andy Burnham running for? Is he running for Makersfield or is he running for PM? So there's really two ways you play it. You run it for Makersfield, you say, I'm going to run Makerfield, I'm going to represent you in Parliament and you're going to have no issues. But everybody knows that if the moment that he crosses that white line, he's running for Prime Minister. And so you have this big issue, like you're running for Prime Minister now, so you're going to stand for me. So if I'm going to vote for somebody, you can either run this election as be one of the few people in the UK who can vote for Prime Minister, or if I was an opposition party, I would just say, I need you to pledge not to run for Prime Minister. I need you to be an MP for this local area. Wow. I feel like he would be, and think about him being asked that question. Now, I'm surprised he hasn't been asked it yet. Yeah. Honestly, I don't know. I feel like if you're Andy Burnham, in a way, that's kind of the pitch you're making to the voters is, okay, you put me in, I will run for the Labour leadership and I may very well win. And then all of a sudden the PM is from your district. The PM is from Makerfield. And if you want things done that are going to make things better for Makerfield, who better to be representing you than the person in charge of the government as a whole, right? I'm not saying that that's a pitch that everyone would sign on to. Because after all, the obvious counter pitch is, no, he's going to be too busy to run the country. What's he going to think about Mac? Exactly. Right. It's not the easiest sell in the world. Yeah. Unless you're. But on the other hand, if you're willing to make the pitch, basically, I think the argument really sort of has to be, look, we need change of the leadership of the government as a whole. Things are not getting better, and they need to get better. And if we can make them better for the country, they will be better for Makerfield. And it's exactly because I understand the problems facing Makerfield that I understand the problems facing the country. Right? I would, if I were getting paid money to suggest, a political comms approach, that's what I would say. It's probably not a coincidence that I'm not getting paid any money to be in charge of political comms, Chris.
Yes,
so, yeah.
That's fair. And I think that obviously you have a few more weeks of this by-election time, so we'll see how it's going. But I think we're going to take a little break, and then we're going to come back with the international section.
All right,
and we will be right back. And we're back.
Chris, I think it's time for us to turn our eyes towards the Strait of Hormuz.
Oh, good. I haven't thought about it for the past 25 minutes.
Exactly, right? And God forbid we get a moment's rest from, the stupidest war in all of human history, Chris.
I wouldn't say the stupidest in all of human history. I'd just say the stupidest one to date.
Well, it's a good point. You never know what people are going to come up with next. Yes. After all, Trump apparently has got enough troops now in place to invade Cuba.
Oh, that's so right. Yeah. I mean, hey, listen, when you're digging, just keep on going down there because it only gets better.
Absolutely. That's the first rule of digging a hole, Chris, is dig deeper.
Just gotta stop.
You got to dig deep. Yeah.
Yeah, so, dig deep.
But let's keep to this particular stupid war. So, as you all know, because you do things like purchase petrol and go to the grocery store, prices
pay energy bills.
These days. Yeah. Prices are a little bit on the high side these days. And of course, that has to do with the fact that Donald Trump unilaterally declared war on Iran and just started killing a bunch of people.
I just need to have, as I always say, on the 27th of February, 2026, the Straits of Hormuz were open and gas prices and petrol prices, energy prices were fairly stable.
That is true. On.
Just want to make sure we all understand that.
Yep. But ever since then, thanks to Donald Trump, prices have gone up. And that's because Iran immediately reacted by closing the Strait of Hormuz, that everyone knew they would do for decades because they had done it before decades ago. And it was a whole thing then. And that's why it's a whole thing now. Obviously, this is a problem. If you're Donald Trump, you do not want prices to be really through the roof unless Donald Trump really is as stupid as some people think he is. Apparently, he's been saying how it's great that oil prices are high because that means America makes more money.
Oh, wow.
Because America is a major oil producer. So it's great when petrol prices go through the roof because that means that America makes more money, Chris.
Yeah, no, it's funny because when he says America, I know exactly what he's saying. He's not saying that you or I or people who are living in America are making more money. No. He means his buddies. He's talking to a portion of his constituency there, the billionaires, you might say.
Exactly. Exxon makes more money, Chris.
Oh, good for them. I'm so happy.
What's good for Exxon is good for America. So,
especially in the water.
This is... If you are a Republican politician, you are looking at this scenario and it must be like being in a waking nightmare. Because what you are seeing is you have thrown all of your dignity away to join a cult of personality. And now the guy who is at the center of this cult is leading you all off of a cliff. And you can see the cliff and the bus is hurtling towards the cliff. And you know the cliff is going to keep being there as the bus hurdles towards him. And the guy who is in the driver's seat is like, what's great about cliffs? Going over them.
Oh, or actually, my analogy, my metaphor, my image here isn't just that he's driving the bus. It's that he has an ejector seat that you don't. It's that and he's got the bus on autopilot, and there's a point of no return, which we may have passed if you're in the Republican Party, which we will talk about in the next section. But in the next section, we're talking about the fact that, we are once again in a position where we are 20 seconds away from a deal to open up the straits and everything's going to be back to normal and don't worry about it, or 20 seconds from invading Iran.
Yep.
we're back to this Schrödinger's invasion, Schrödinger's war.
You beat me to it. You beat me to it, Chris. That's exactly right. There is both war and peace. It all depends on whether or not you have checked your stock portfolio. Like,
yes,
it's kind of amazing, because it has been months now. It has been months of this very same pattern of the markets freak out, prices go up in the oil markets. This leads to a lot of consternation amongst countries of the world that have to do things like, buy petrol or buy food, things of that nature.
Yeah.
And so then Donald Trump announces, no, we've totally won the war. The war is almost over. It's all overdone with the shouting. We just need to, get a final agreement, and we're 95% of the way there.
Yeah.
And then the markets go, hooray! And oil prices tumble, and everything is lovely. Donald Trump makes some trades on the market, which we won't talk about. And then the Iranians come out and say that, what the fuck are you talking about? That none of that is true. We are not close to an agreement. We have many things to discuss. And then oil prices go right the hell back up.
Yeah. I think this is why we got to look at the markets on Monday, because last weekend was Memorial Day.
Mm-hmm.
As we couldn't remember in the last pod, last weekend was Memorial Day. So on Monday, the markets are going to open with people saying, oh, the prices are going to go, or sorry, the war is going to be over.
Right.
And then if it's not, then honestly, we won't know who's making trades until Monday morning.
Well, it's going to be very interesting to find that out, but I can bet you, and I would bet a considerable amount of money, that Donald Trump's portfolio has undergone some alterations in the last 48 hours, Chris. Like, what's amazing to me is that the market keeps falling for it. This is a situation in which someone is actively taking their money, like offering them a trade where you can only lose if you say yes. Like, someone offers to sell you a car, but the car has no engine. And you're like, oh no, my car has no engine. I've lost all this money buying this car. But then the next week, the guy comes back and say, well, I know the last car wasn't so great, but I got a new car for you.
I think it's even worse than that. I think it's like you get a picture of a car and you're just like, oh, hey, here's the picture of a car. And then you put down money for the car because you're like, oh, yeah, sure. Well, it'll be delivered. It's going to be delivered. It's going to be delivered. And then it never turns up. And like, what the hell happened to my car? Just like, oh, listen. My bad. But here's the car. The car's coming. The car is coming.
Yeah.
And here's a same car, same picture. And I swear to God, it's coming this time. I need more money, though.
So it's a little bit like the Trump phone of international diplomacy is what you're saying.
Oh, the Trump phone. Oh, bless. Yeah. So, but we could talk about that in the other section, but just, it just sucks that we're back here again. And I mean, we're not military experts, obviously, but, the talk this weekend and over the past week has not really been too big about this deal. It's just, it was mooted and now we're waiting. And so on Monday, we'll see if it's worth talking about. But maybe we have seen a bit of a shift here. So Donald Trump says, the war is coming to an end. You can all go back to normal. And the world's like, yeah, listen, this is like the fourth time.
Yeah.
And it
Fool
is.
me
I think
once.
it's like the fourth.
Shame on you. Fool me 17 times. Then I have to start rethinking my priors.
Then I have to one more time. You only get one more go of it. And, maybe it has a lot to do with his position in America. But again, we'll talk about the next section. But I guess we're just going to have to sit back and see what happens on Monday. And, if peace is struck, then maybe we'll have to pull Trump out of the UFC fight in front of the White House. And
that
just
would
say, hey, man.
Yeah.
But before we go, I think it might, it just popped into my head, obviously. And I've been reading about it as well. And it just must have been off my list. But there's a bit of an epidemic going on in the Congo.
Yeah.
And it's Ebola. So it requires a little bit of time. And I think first off, we need to understand that there's been a couple of virus scares over the past few months, hantavirus, which comes from the aerosolized bacteria or viruses from rat or mouse droppings. And there was that cruise ship that got held up off the coast of Cape Verde. But then this is different. See, like Africa has had Ebola outbreaks before.
Oh yeah,
and Ebola is it is a terrible disease to catch. But you have to be around. Normally, you have to be around like the outgoings of a person. To and be really around it to catch it. But this version seems very different.
Yeah. So for those of you who are sort of wondering about what Ebola is, it is a very nasty disease that has a very high death rate, and the way in which you die is quite bad. The thing that kills you, though, isn't actually the disease itself, but your immune system's reaction to that disease. It triggers what is known as a cytokine storm. And if you've never looked up what a cytokine storm is online, then you sleep like a baby. And I don't know if I want to encourage you to do your research on this, people, because basically what it does is it sort of like causes so your immune system goes to war and decides we can't stop this. The only thing we could do is to nuke the planet from orbit, but the planet is you. So your immune system basically kills you. It's like a self-destruct switch. So people who have, who suffer this, basically they kind of dissolve from the inside, and that means that those who are suffering from advanced cases of this, those who are dying of it, they are sweating blood, right?
Yeah.
So their sweat, their blood, their bodily excretions, this is how the virus spreads. And so you're right that it's really different. It's really important to distinguish this from, say, COVID or the hantavirus. COVID, of course, is airborne. The hantavirus you get from aerosolized particles of rat droppings and what have you, meaning that you can get it from breathing. And it's very easy to spread in that sense. Or at least it's easy to spread if there's the contaminated rat droppings in the case of hantavirus. With Ebola, you can't get it from the air. It's not airborne. And you're right. The only way to get it is to come into contact with blood, sweat, and, bodily excretions, which, of course, those who are suffering from it tend to have a lot of. But what that means is that the people who tend to get it tend to be those who are dealing with the sick.
Yeah.
This is a virus that is almost, it's almost perfect for killing doctors and nurses and funeral home workers and family members who are caring for their family members who are stricken. It is brutal.
This is why the world has been working hard for many decades now to prevent this from outbreaks. And when outbreaks do happen, that they have response teams ready to go, because because it is a brutal, horrible virus. And the United States was helping with this as well.
Yeah.
Up until recently.
Up until Doge. So last year, when Elon Musk was, for some godforsaken reason, put in charge of hacking off various bits of the government, one of the bits he hacked off was the CDC's program to monitor and catch early cases of Ebola in Africa. And he just basically cut all the funding for it. And then he announced, hey guys, fun story, I accidentally cut off all the Ebola funding, but it's okay. We've restored all the funding. Everything is fine. And then he gave a little laugh. It turns out he was just lying. They never restored the funding. They just killed it. They killed it entirely. So that means that when this particular outbreak started, there was no infrastructure in place for monitoring. So they didn't catch it early. And the thing is, Ebola is one of those things that you can catch early because you don't normally get it from just sort of like hanging out in a developed area. You get it because you are you're in wilderness areas where you can come into contact with the animals that carry Ebola in the first place, right? For it to spread to a human settlement, it needs to be like a patient zero comes in, they get really sick, they start dying of the disease, the family members come into contact with it, and then it can spread from there. But it's relatively hard to spread, so it's relatively easy to catch if you've got the monitoring in place. And thanks to Elon Musk, very specifically, thanks to this one billionaire Nazi dickhead, there wasn't the monitoring in place to catch it. And that means that the first anyone heard of it officially, it had already gotten into a city. And cities have lots of people in close contact. It is exactly the place where Ebola really can spread and spread badly. And there have been hundreds of confirmed cases so far. There have been hundreds of deaths. There are thousands of people who are at risk. And that's with monitoring that is still basically non-existent, which means that it's actually much, much, much worse than that.
Yeah.
And to make things even worse,
wow,
this particular version of the disease, we do not have a cure for. we do not have a protocol for.
Yeah.
Like, this is just, it's a new variant. We haven't had a chance to do the research yet. This is exactly the worst thing to have let get into a city, into a major population area. Elon Musk has hundreds of thousands of deaths on his hands. This is just one more thing to add in to the long list of human beings that man has killed through his negligence, through his spite, and through his stupidity. But yeah, so now we have to deal with that. And if you're not seeing big headlines on that in your local paper, people, that tells you a little bit of something about what the editors of your paper think is worth mentioning.
Well, it's part of the, I suppose, America first. Oh, Americans won't worry about Ebola. But, you know, we have airports in America. We have airports around the world. And people who get sick don't get sick on day one. They show they're sick on day 4, 5, 10, something like that. So that's why it's important to ensure that you help the world. And when you help the world, you help yourself. But on that, because there's nothing more to say. There's nothing more to do. We just have to hope and wait and watch. Exactly. On that, we're going to take a little break and come back in a second with the America section.
All right.
And we'll be right back. And we're back.
Chris, I've got some news for you.
Oh, hey, listen. This is real. Like, this just happened, hasn't it?
Yeah, this is late breaking news. Apparently, Donald Trump has commented on the Schrödinger's war situation in Iran, and he wants everyone to know that he is in, quote, no hurry to make a deal with Iran. So, we're screwed, people. We're screwed.
Have a good summer. Yeah.
Hope you weren't planning on flying anywhere.
Well, I mean, if you've already bought your tickets, you're fine. If you haven't bought your tickets, you're fine. Get on it.
If you bought your tickets in February, you're fine.
Well, provided the fuel is going to. Anyway, let's not get into that right now. I am not a jet fuel economist. Let's talk about just Trump's horrible, terrible, very bad week.
Let's do that. It'll make me feel better.
The start of this terrible, horrible, very bad week begins with a victory for Trump. In Texas. Yes, in Texas, Trump had 2 people that were running for the Republican spot for the Senate elections this year. Obviously, there were actually 5 people running, but only 2 really had a chance.
Exactly.
And their names are John Cornyn and Ken Paxton. And John Cornyn is the current sitting senator for Texas. He is one of 2. The other 2 being Ted Cruz.
Texas really knows how to pick him.
Ted fucking Cruz. Okay. So the 2 people here, you have Cornyn and Cruz, and Cornyn, according to all reports, is a well-liked member in his caucus, and a mover and a shaker in DC, and knows how to raise money and knows how to get things done on the Republican side. This is no comment on his policies or what he believes. This is just about, the efficacy of him as a politician,
as a legislator,
as a politician.
You're right. Republicans don't pass laws.
No,
they just raise money and and say yes to whatever Trump asks.
Yes, exactly.
So,
and he was running against a guy named Ken Paxton. Now, you may not know who Ken Paxton is, but if you're from Texas, you would know him as the impeached, scandal-ridden. Has he been done for?
He is. He hasn't been convicted of corruption yet, but that's because the investigation and the case have been going on for over a decade. Basically.
Oh, right, yeah.
So this guy is fantastically corrupt. And it's amazing. It's amazing how corrupt this guy is. His wife recently divorced him on, and I'm going to quote here, Chris.
Okay.
Biblical grounds.
Ooh.
I know. What does that mean? I don't know, but I have my suspicions.
Well, that should go straight to MAGA.
Yeah, exactly. So, in other words, what you've got is someone who's almost like grown in a lab to appeal to Donald Trump.
Yes.
And of course, Ken Paxton's whole argument, he is the Attorney General of Texas. He's been a prick for a decade in public, right? He's been just a terrible person. So he's got a lot of support in the MAGA. John Cornyn is not exactly a squish. John Cornyn is, very right wing, very conservative. It's a real indication, I think, of just what has happened to the Republican Party under Donald Trump, right? So someone like John Cornyn, who was on the right wing of the party before 2016, is now being thrown out for just not being Trumpy enough,
And let's be very clear here. There was a runoff a few weeks ago, and Cornyn came out on top of that runoff of the five people running. Then the people, so the runoff happened just 4 or 5 days ago. Cornyn only came out on top of that runoff by 1%, and yet somehow he came out. Ken Paxton won with 63% of the Republican vote, and John Cornyn won with 36%, getting almost 2/3 of the vote for the two of them. And that is directly because Trump endorsed Paxton. He basically said, Ken Paxton's my guy. He knows how MAGA works. He's loyal, or whatever he said. Doesn't matter. He just basically, he's been seen as loyal to Trump, and Trump has now granted him the ability to run in the Republican ticket against a guy named James Tallarico, who we have mentioned before on the pod.
So it's really interesting because on the one hand, the polling has been surprising. Basically, in Texas, you've had on the left almost like this fixed belief for over a decade now that because Texas is increasingly Hispanic, and because Hispanics in America generally tend to be more likely to vote Democratic than Republican, that this means that Texas is going to go Democratic any day now. Texas is going to turn blue. Don't just you watch, Chris.
I was wondering where we were going with this.
Yeah, absolutely going to happen any day now. And then, of course, it keeps not happening, like to the point where the closest the Democrats have come to winning a statewide race in Texas was the last time that Ted Cruz got reelected.
He was running against O'Rourke.
It was Peter O'Rourke. So like ex, member of a punk band, super nice, charismatic white dude. And he did very well for a Democrat in Texas in that he lost by, I think, less than 3 points.
That's real close.
I know, really, really close. But of course, the only reason that happened is that he was running against Ted Cruz, who is everyone hates Ted Cruz. Everyone hates Ted Cruz. The people who vote for him hate Ted Cruz. Yeah. So it's kind of amazing. So obviously, you would think that means that James Tallarico, the Democratic candidate, is doomed. Obviously, can't possibly win because he's not running against Ted Cruz. He's going to be running against Ken Paxton, who the MAGA people love. But what's interesting is that there's been quite a few polls that show that Tallarico has a slight lead against Paxton.
Well, there's another thing happening here as well. The reason why Texas hasn't turned blue is because the assumption that Latinos are going to vote Democrat has been completely and totally wrong. More
likely to vote Democrat than Republican, absolutely. The margins weren't there to in any way overbalance the incredible preference of white Texans for the Republican Party. But
in the last election in 2024, the counties where they thought that some of them did go blue and some of them are very big Latino counties on the Mexican border with Texas, all of them went red.
Yep.
The Latinos voted heavily for Trump in the last election, to their detriment, I will say. And the Latinos, the Venezuelans and the Cubans in Florida who voted for Trump, sitting there shaking their hands. I don't feel Trump. And then her husband gets taken away by ICE. These are real things that happen. So we have these people who voted for Trump thinking that he was going to. I think, let's give them some benefit of the doubt here that they were going to get ICE to go after some serious criminals. They're going to ICE to go after the people that they maybe have been running away from or heard from, from back home. But instead, they got Trump and Miller, right? So all these people who were voting Republican, maybe single issue voters, maybe, conservative voters, sure. But they have definitely, that flip seems to have happened.
And that's really interesting. This is one of the things that makes Texas one of the states to pay a lot of attention to in November. So obviously, if you've been following our coverage, quote unquote, of the gerrymandering race, basically in the United States, that all began with Texas, where Donald Trump demanded that Texas redistrict itself, gerrymander itself a few more. I think like they wanted to get an extra 5 seats.
Yes.
That would go Republican no matter how people voted. Because, what says democracy more than politicians picking their voters?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. And so the map that they came out with in a normal election, would basically gain the Republicans an extra 5 seats and
Yes.
take those seats away from the Democrats. But those lines were drawn with one very important assumption. And that assumption was that the voting patterns amongst Tex and Hispanics that they saw in 2024 would be replicated. That would keep happening. That Donald Trump and the Republican Party were now in a position to compete for a much more sizable chunk of the Latino electorate than they had been. And the fact that Donald Trump has spent all of his time in power basically hunting down abuelas at the point of a gun has, not sat well with a lot of Hispanics and Latinos.
With that constituency that you basically have designed your entire electoral platform on.
Exactly.
It's assuming that they're just either not going to hear the news, they're not going to pay attention, or they're not going to care because they only watch Telemundo or something. I mean, like that's the American, one of the 2 American the Spanish-speaking stations, if they still exist. Univision is the other one. But it's just really ridiculous that they did all these things in the middle of, like, these redistrictings were happening during the beginnings of the ICE push across the country. So I think we'll have to sit and watch this election, obviously, with the rest of them. But people have been saying that Paxton, who is massively corrupt, he's got to raise money. They're going to figure out how to do that. And they're going to have to spend an enormous amount of money because Tallarico is basically a religious left-winger who now the left are trying to put all sorts of tags on, like he is pro-trans and he's a vegan and like all the things, kind of the MAGA podcaster bully crowd stuff that to kind of get people to not like him.
Stephen Miller actively said that he is a trans man.
That's right. Yeah.
So, because he's a class act, Stephen Miller, just really, really at the forefront of ethical etiquette-based fascism. So,
but they're basically trying to do it because they can't beat him on the issues, and they can't beat him as soon as the 2 of them are speaking at the same time in a debate. I think it's over. And all that MAGA and Miller and the rest of them can do is try to tar him with this kind of anti-MAGA brush, which is only really going to work to people who aren't going to vote for him anyway.
I'm going to give you an example of one of the reasons why I think Tallarico is going to come. He's either going to come close to winning, or he might actually pip it. I think he might actually win this one.
Okay.
So he was asked about the fact that he is being called by Ken Paxton James Talafrico, which is lame. That is a lame attack, but there it is. And do you want to know how Tallarico responded to this?
Please tell me.
Ken Paxton set a pedophile free because his rich lawyers got him an Epstein deal. And that is 100% true.
That is 100% true.
Ken Paxton did manage to get an admitted, pled guilty to the charge, pedophile who had abused a young boy over the course of years. Got him released from prison. Got him a deal where he did not even have to go onto the sex offenders list.
Yeah.
Because he had money and because he gave that, he had his fancy lawyers talk to Ken Paxton. Why would Ken Paxton do that, people? Why would that ever happen? And I don't have a good answer for you other than the fact that clearly Ken Paxton is fine with letting pedophiles out of prison if it is politically convenient for him. And the thing is, I do not know how you come back from that. But also, Ken Paxton has no money, and James Tallarico has a sizable war chest. And also, John Cornyn, the guy who just got defeated in a publicly humiliating fashion by the MAGA faction of his party. He's the guy who was raising money not just for himself, but for others in the party. He's one of the party's main fundraisers. You think that man is going to be pulling out all the stops to hook up Paxton and Trump at this point? This is almost like a situation grown in a lab to create the only possible way that a Democrat can win statewide in Texas. And I still don't think it's the likeliest thing to happen. but you cannot discount the possibility at this point.
No, you can't. So we're going to leave that right there. We're going to talk about a couple things in quick succession, all about just big old L's for Trump. The first one is it seems like the government has dropped the case against James Comey.
Yeah. Was there a case for them to drop?
Well, apparently this is a very serious deal. He put in some seashells, 8647 in seashells.
Well, did he put the seashells there, or did he stumble upon the seashells and then take the picture, Chris?
That's true.
I don't.
He took a picture of seashells.
Had any evidence that he actually did the seashell writing himself?
That's true. There was a picture taken of potentially a naturally occurring formation of seashells that happened to. Form a thing that can be interpreted as 8647, which the U.S. government interpreted as a direct threat upon the president and indicted him. That case is dropped. Is there anything more we have to say other than why the hell was it brought forward in the first place?
Well, I mean, because clearly it's an abuse of prosecutorial power. Like this is one more indication of the deep corruption at the Department of Justice. We're going to have to clean house entirely. I think every lawyer who is still working for the Department of Justice at this point, the presumption has to be that they should be disbarred. And I'm quite serious about this, because the Department of Justice is now a criminal conspiracy to abuse the public power in order to punish the president's political enemies. If you're a lawyer who works for the government, right, your job isn't to do whatever you are told. You're a professional. You are regulated by the bar, and one of the things that a lawyer has to maintain is the professional independence, Chris.
Yeah.
Like if someone tells you, I want you to bring this case. No, there's not an evidence to bring it, but the boss wants it done. Your job as a lawyer who works for the government, or indeed works for your client, is to say, piss off. I will not commit a fraud upon the court. The fact that so many government lawyers have been absolutely willing to do this. And we've seen this not just with the James Comey case. We've seen this with the Broadview 6, where it turned out that the prosecutor had basically just profoundly lied to the grand jury, had done improper vouching, all sorts of incredibly unprofessional and deeply unethical and honestly verging on illegal acts. This is an all indication of just how bad things have gotten.
Indeed.
I've gone on a rant, and my rant is...
You have gone on a rant, and so there's not much more to say other than the case was dropped. And another thing that's been blocked is the $1.8 billion slush fund for insurrectionists.
That's true.
That case has been, I believe the case was reopened. Basically, the case was reopened.
This is wonderful. Can I talk about this a little bit?
You do what you know, man.
Thanks, man. This is so the thing is, when a case is brought before a judge, right? When you actually have a lawsuit, you can't just sort of say, all right, well, we're going to settle the lawsuit and that's it. We're all done. Everything's fine here. No need to look at anything. Usually the judge has to sign off on it, right? Because otherwise the court doesn't recognize that it happened. Yeah. And if you are trying to actually end a suit, the trade is, okay, I give you money in damages, and in exchange, you can no longer bring the suit against me, right? And that trade has to be recognized by the court for it to be legally binding in that sense, right? Yeah. So when the slush fund was put forward, Donald Trump had a case against his own Department of Justice. The judge at the time was saying, I don't think there's a real case here. You guys are both on the same side. What is going on? And while the media keeps talking about how the slush fund was all part of a settlement, it was in no way a settlement. What happened was Donald Trump just sort of dropped his case. And then the Department of Justice announced that they were going to give him $1.8 billion to play with as he sees fit. Yes. Which is absolutely absurd. The judicial system, however, had the opportunity and had the ability to reopen the case because, you're claiming that this is a settlement. It's not actually a settlement. Also, there wasn't actually a case in the first place. This stinks to high heaven. So they are reopening it. And I cannot wait for that to move forward.
Well, yeah. I mean, and it's still the case that if this money is to be dispersed to, people like the head of the Proud Boys, the former head of the Proud Boys, and other people who attacked the country, really. Yep. like we said, that's the last straw in any kind of presumption that America is a functioning democracy. But here we are. The case, but the case has been, like it's not just happened because of some fingers have been snapped. The justice system has said, oh, "What the fuck are you doing?" Like no.
Yes, this is clearly insane.
It's just like it is probably like somebody came across somebody's desk and they're just like, "No, this isn't happening." And like and I think that is the strength of the country at the moment, because the conventions are still seemingly holding, but we'll see for how long. And then, of course, there is the last thing before we get to the end of the pod. I think the biggest hit this week, not the fact that the case was dropped against Comey, or that the slush fund is seemingly there's a bit issue there,
or that the courts have ruled that Trump has to take his name off the Kennedy.
Well, that's what I was gonna say.
Oh, really? Because I thought you were going towards an even better thing.
No,
even more. If you have a better thing,
if you have a better thing, then we can end with that. But of course, there's this thing that was recently said that Trump's name is coming off of the Kennedy Center, which I think is the biggest hit for him. We're not. Really? I know what the last thing is. We'll leave the last thing for good news.
All right, fair enough. That's fair.
But this is why we have the dress rehearsal, Patrick.
I'm so sorry. I thought I was all ready to finish your sandwich, Chris. That's what I thought was happening. So
my sandwich is still making it. I was putting down the mustard, the mayo, the lettuce, the tomatoes, the turkey, the ham, the mortadella, the bacon. Yep. It's a very unhealthy sandwich.
See, that's the thing. That's the thing. People, he had thought about this in advance.
I had.
You could tell. Yeah, he's planned.
Trump's name is coming off of the Kennedy Center for now. And I believe there is video. I just saw a blink of it online, but there may have been like a cherry picker there, which is this person just like pushing his name off of the Kennedy Center with speed and just letting the letters fall to the ground. Just
oh God, like that should go up there with like the images in 1991 of people tearing down statues of Lenin in post-Soviet countries, right? Like that has to go on like with the tearing down of like the statue to Saddam in the middle of Baghdad. Or, the tearing down of statues to various Confederate traitors in the United States in the, in 2020. So
absolutely. I mean, it's if we're able to survive this portion of time, which is brutal and it's harsh, and it's the biggest test of our, democracy since the 1860s.
Yep.
That image might be the image, depending on where we get to. Putting up his name in big bright lights in the Kennedy Center when he shouldn't have, when it's completely, and after completely suborning the committee and putting his lackeys on the committee, some people had to like quit the committee and are suing or get fired off of the committee. And then you have this big image of his name going up, and then literally 2-3 months later, there's a person like grand opening, grand closing, pop, 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 back to what it was because you broke the rules. So that's how it works, because you're the president, not the dear leader. For most of the country, there are members of the country who would gladly sacrifice.
And unfortunately, several of them are on the Supreme Court. So
that's just it. A lot of them are out there, and for a while, as we discuss good news, some of those people were seen to be Morris Day and the Time. Some of those people were seen to be Martina McBride. Some of those people were seen to be Milli Vanilli for some reason.
Yep. I think you're talking about the 250th anniversary of the United States' founding. I think you're talking about the huge, America's County Fair that they were putting on, a huge bipartisan fun fair for the whole family of, for the nation. And they did have quite a few people lined up to perform, didn't they? They did have, they had Young MC, for example.
They had Young MC. They
Ready
had
to
Brett Michaels
in the year of our Lord 2026.
They had a lot of people that would have made 1993 Chris say, "Hey, I know that guy."
Absolutely. Right. Yeah. So, it was a little bit. Yeah, I was really disappointed when I saw the guest list, because I was like, really, the Commodores are they're gonna do a Trump thing, and
CNC really Music Factory,
right? Like an absurd thing to have CNC Music Factory like perform for Donald Trump. What the hell? That isn't right.
Well,
you know,
your confusion seems to have spread to the performers themselves because not. So this is how I discovered that this thing was happening. I got on my feed unsolicited, and I don't follow them, even though I should. This is when I realized I should follow them. Morris Day and The Time.
Okay.
And they had huge hits in the 80s, and they were like partnered with Prince. I mean, these guys are very, very.
Oh, damn. Okay. All right.
Like these guys aren't messing around, right?
Can you give me one of their hits, Chris?
I want to make sure I get the name of it right.
All right.
So I want to make a jump cut just to make sure I get it right, because
that's a really good idea.
Yeah,
I threw you into the middle of the shark bait.
Okay, no. I just want to make sure the name is right. It's Jungle Love, which is the biggest song they've made.
Oh,
wee oh.
Yeah, that's wait. Is that no? That's
no. You're totally
that's Jungle
wrong.
Love. That's Jungle Love.
No, you're totally wrong, and I will play it for you afterwards.
Okay, all right.
It's I might leave this whole thing on just because of how wrong you are. But trust me on this one. Morris Day did Jungle Love. Oh wee oh, and he's wearing the suits and the whole thing. And so when he popped up on my screen saying, I'm not doing this. We had no idea it was supposed to be this. We didn't realize it was going to be partisan. So we're not doing it. And then like from that, I'm like, what the hell's going on? Look it up. And all these people were signed up to do it. I'm just like, only Morris Day has dropped out, but CNC Music Factory is there. And then I look at the middle of this cube of people, this square, and who's in the middle of that square? Milli fucking Vanilli. As that is the ultimate explanation, like the description of this administration, that you thought it was a good idea to put Milli Vanilli on stage, who are best known for Girl You Know, It's Girl You Know, It's Girl You Know, It's Girl You Know, It's Girl.
Like, oh my God! For those of you who are not as old as the goddamn hills, Milli Vanilli was a God. They were a music duo, and they got caught lip syncing. It was the first really big lip syncing scandal that I was ever aware of. Right? Oh my God!
It was these pair of good-looking dudes. They were from Germany, and they were like models, basically. And so they had,
and that's all they were. It turned out.
Yeah, and so they had a song called "Girl, You Know It's True." Ooh, ooh, ooh. You know, they had that song, right?
Yep.
And then they were on stage at some festival in the 90s, and their track slipped. And they're in the middle of their massive dance routine, which I don't know if you've ever sang and danced at the same time. Britney Spears had a horrible, this happened to her. And basically, you usually use a backing track or you use a recording of yourself because you're running around the stage, jumping up and down. It's really, really, really hard to do.
Seriously, like there's a reason why most actors don't do musicals. And it's because like the amount of in shape you have to be for that shit is really pretty impressive.
Which is a shout out to Harry Potter, Radcliff, Daniel Radcliffe. He did the Brotherhood of Man one. The brother, all I learned in business without trying. The one that Matthew Broderick did.
Yeah, fair enough. Right? Yeah, how to succeed in business without really
succeed in business without really trying.
Yeah.
So
okay. God, good
Daniel Radcliffe did that, and he was really good, and it was really, really hard. Like you had to be like in massive shape to do it because you're running around there singing at the top of your lungs in key and in time.
Yep.
And so Milli Vanilli were doing that, and then their track broke. And then you're like, oh, well, maybe it was just that one time. No, they had a separate group of people who were singing for them who then tried to do their own thing. That went away. Yep. I've gone on my rant for today. But
so what really makes it interesting that they were claiming to have Milli Vanilli ready to go is that one half of the two people who were famous for being Milli Vanilli died in 1998, Chris.
Yes. Other half of Milli Vanilli is dead.
Right. So when they say Milli Vanilli was going to be performing, I don't know if they knew who they thought was going to show up.
Yeah.
Like the people who were the singers apparently were like, no, we're not doing that. We're not doing that. We don't want to do the Trump thing. That's crazy. You know? Yeah. And so what, they were just going to have one dude in his 60s? One German dude in his 60s. Like,
exactly. Well, that's the whole point of like why putting them at the center of the square. I mean, it should have triggered my like, this must be AI. But it's when when Morris Day, I'm not doing this, and everyone else is like Brett Markles, I'm not doing this. Only person who said they're going to do it.
Yep.
Vanilla Ice. Vanilla Ice.
The early 1990s called, and they just wanted to apologize. Like, seriously, Vanilla fucking Ice. He was like, I was like, what, 11, I think, when his big song, when he had his
Ice
one
Baby.
big hit, Ice Baby, right?
Yeah.
And he was a joke at the time. He was a joke at the time because he had clearly just entirely lifted
Under Pressure.
Under Pressure, right? Like, and then they called him out, and it was like, isn't this literally just the bass track to Under Pressure? And it was like,
yes.
no, because there goes da 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 da, whereas mine goes da 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 da. Yeah, so
dun, 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 dun. Like, so here goes dun 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 stop dun 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 dun, and there goes dun 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 dun. That it's all about whether it's a quarter rest or if it's a 16th rest.
Absolutely. Do you have the snare? You have the snare, Chris. As long as you have the snare one time, that's fair use.
So
that's
well, we can get into an entire different thing about sampling, which my loved ones have heard about many times.
Fair enough.
But that's I mean, like just for other context before we end the pod. Basically, there are two competing 250th anniversary America celebrations that are trying to start very soon. There was one that was created by Congress. And then one I believe that's basically created by MAGA. Yeah. And the one that was created by MAGA is where everybody thought they were going to be performing at. And they said, oh, we thought it was the congressional one. Whoops. Yeah. So we don't want to do this anymore because, I think it was in 1976 when we had the bicentennial.
Yeah.
There was a congressional bipartisan committee to have a bunch of Hurrah America parties. But kind of in line with what's going on in America right now, there are two of them. There were two and 250th anniversary parties. And it is indicative of the times that we're in. But frankly, I'd put it more on MAGA for, if you wanted to say that you're on everybody's side or whatever, which they never actually have claimed, then just let Congress and let's have a bipartisan, 4th of July party.
What's really amazing, Chris, is that if you think about it, if they just let the bipartisan good feelings 250th anniversary thing happen, right, and not made it a partisan deal and not try to wedge Trump into it, if they just let it happen and Trump was president while it happened, he would get some political bounce from it. I have no doubt about it. But by making it about himself, by turning it into a test of loyalty to Trump, he's guaranteed that he will gain no benefit. It's in the same way that he managed to fuck up having a moon flight. Yeah. He had NASA fly past the fucking moon. It was a big deal. It was in all the papers. And it's exactly the kind of thing that like every politician hopes that they can be in charge while that happens so they can get a little bit of reflected glory. But Donald Trump has gotten no political bounce from it because even Venezuela, like a massive tactical military victory, an absurd thing to be able to pull off. He got no bounce from it. And it's because he is constitutionally incapable of allowing somebody else to do something cool and have it not be about him. So he cannot accept reflected glory, Chris. And it is one of his biggest political weaknesses.
I think I'd like to end with this from a story from the BBC regarding the Great American State Fair. That's the name of the performance that we were talking about.
Yep. That's the one. Thank you.
So we were discussing about Milli Vanilli, and we were talking about how I believe they pulled out. We were wrong. The voices of Milli Vanilli will not be performing, but Milli Vanilli, one half of the duo Fab Morvan, he will perform as scheduled. So what you'll have at the Great American State Fair, or Great State American Fair, or whatever it's called, is Vanilla Ice and one half of the duo who can't sing, and now 35 years later probably can't do all the dance moves and will definitely not look the same. No. So what you're going to get is Milli Vanilli and Vanilla Ice. So pay your tickets, enjoy, and if you're going to go to this thing, I got a bridge to sell you.
And if that's not good news, I don't know what is.
So, well, I think we'll end it there. Thanks for listening. And as always, I'm Dr. Silverstein.
I'm Dr. Armshaw.
And we are doctors.
Not doctors.
Good night.